Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting of the Lansing Charter Commission on October 8th, 2024 to order. Mr. Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Certainly. Commissioner Adam Simon.
Here.
Commissioner Anderson.
Here.
Commissioner Bauer. Here. Commissioner Boyd. Commissioner Dowd. Here. Commissioner Jeffries.
Here.
Commissioner Lopez. Commissioner Kawhi.
Present.
Commissioner Washington. There are 8 members present at quorum, and we are to the adoption of the agenda.
Okay. At this time, could you also note in the record that Commissioner Boyd has an excused absence, please? There's an adoption of the agenda. A motion would be in order to approve the agenda for tonight. Is there a motion? It's been moved. Is it supported?
Support.
There's been moved and it's supported. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The agenda is adopted. Now is the time for public comment.
Okay, we have a few people signed in. Jim Dravenstadt-Mosseri, followed by Calvin Jones. And you have 3 minutes to address the commission.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Jim Dravenstadt-Mosseri. I'm here tonight to speak about the Lansing Board of Water and Light. I am a retiree of BWL, having worked there for 43 years. During my time at the board, I was actively involved in the union, working with the IBW Local 352, and worked as a field service leader. BWL is a strong community partner, and it was a pleasure to work for such an amazing organization. Since retiring, I've continued to be active with BWL, helping to put on their annual United Way kickoff event, a spaghetti luncheon that brings together union and non-union employees to raise money for those who need it most in our community. Board employees raise nearly $60,000 each year for this great community cause. These are perks of having an independent public utility. They treat their employees and retirees well. They give back to their community. They keep the rates lower than their neighboring communities. We should do whatever we can to protect the great community asset. I am encouraging you to make no large changes to the function of the BWL and its Board of Commissioners in this charter. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Calvin Jones and then Randy Dykeheis.
Good evening. My name is Calvin Jones. I serve as Director of Government and Community Relations for the Lansing Board of Water and Light. I'm here today to talk about the Board of Water and Light and the Charter. I know there have been many proposed changes to the way the Board of Water and Light operates, but take it from someone who has been working at the Board of Water and Light for 47 years. The board does not need sweeping changes to the way it operates. I've seen the board go through many different challenges in my years. There have been changes in leadership, new commissioners, new technology, retiring old plants, ice storms, and everything in between. But the core mission of the Board of Water and Light has never changed. The board is committed to provide safe, reliable, affordable utilities to the customers we serve here in Lansing. We are accountable to our city, our ratepayers, our Board of Commissioners, our mayor, and our council. We operate with transparency, holding open meetings and taking feedback. We employ a diverse workforce that lives here. We give back to our community. We are leaders in the utility space, leading the way on clean energy and reliability. We also are an economic driver for the region. We are a strong support of community events like Silver Bells in the cities. And I also brought some 40 annual stickers for you as well. Silver Bells in the City, which is happening this year on November 22nd. The Board of Water and Light has accomplished all this with our current structure. By being an independent body and by having a board appointed by the mayor and approved by the council, let's not change that. Thank you.
Yeah, you can just leave them on the dais. We'll grab them.
Okay.
Thank you. Next, we have Randy Dykhuis.
Hi, I'm Randy Dykhuis, 418 North Sycamore. So, two things. One, I wanted to commend Commissioner Boyd from the last meeting for speaking out in opposition to term limits for elected officials. I think it would be a horrible idea to do that. So, so kudos to her for saying that, and I believe she was the only commissioner who spoke out at that point. My second topic is in reaction to the document and the comments made by Mr. Syracuse at the last meeting. He submitted a document that had some redlining for the current charter and some suggested language, most of which I thought was pretty darn good, but a couple of caveats. He suggested that the Board of Water and Light ought not to be an administrative board, but an advisory board, and that BWL should be managed by City Council. I don't agree, and I don't agree pretty strongly. I've done a little bit of research into how public and municipal utilities are governed, and there's a number of models out there. One of which is the administrative board, one of which is City Council actually running the utility. From what I've read and what I've gathered from comments that people have made, the worst of all possible options is to have the City Council running the utility. There are a number of reasons for that, some of which you can imagine, but adding the responsibility for a $400 million corporation on top of an already overloaded work schedule seems to me to be something that would be completely irresponsible. So better keep the administrative board, which has independent governance of BWL, but make it effective. And you can do that by restructuring within the city charter so that it's not just a shill for management and simply rubber stamps what management says every time something comes in front of them. Last thing, Mr. Syracuse mentioned in his public comments that the general manager gets to set his own salary. That's not true. He is evaluated every year by the Board of Commissioners, and the board has to set a salary increase for him. In no way, shape, or form does he get to set his own salary. So I just wanted to put that out and make sure that's in the record. Thank you.
Thank you. And then next we have Gregory Wines.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you guys taking the time out to hear me. So my name is Gregory Wines, and I serve in several different roles. I'm a speaker, advocate. I also work for state government. I work for the State Appellate Defender Office. I am a paralegal. I'm also a former juvenile lifer. I served about 29 years in the Michigan Department of Corrections. And because I served, those 29 years and my conviction stems back from 1994, I can actually run for your office. I can actually take your seat. But someone who has not served or been convicted of a crime that long ago can't. And this is actually in direct violation of our state constitution. To be honest with you, it disgusts me. It disgusts me. I work with law every single day. I work with things that repulse me, and this is abhorrent. I mean, look at the state constitution. Our state constitution prevents people from running for offices for dishonesty, deceit, fraud, or breach of the public trust. And those convictions stem from when they held office. Why is that? Why is the Lansing Charter going in opposition of our founding fathers? Our founding fathers who established the state constitution. Are you all prepared to go with that? Are you all prepared to sleep at night and say, you know what, the founding fathers were wrong, they didn't get it right? Our Lansing Charter is correct. I don't think that's right. And I certainly hope that when you go to sleep at night that bothers you. Because it should. It should bother you. It should bother you that Lansing is an outlier. That we can come into, that we can rectify this problem simply by taking out a portion in section 2103. And that portion is, or any felony. Or any felony. The Founding Fathers did not put or any felony in the state constitution, and they didn't put it in there for a reason. Again, I hope this disgusts you. I hope it repulses you. I hope the fact that this language is in direct conflict with our Michigan State Constitution is something that bothers you. And I want you to keep one thing in mind. The United States Constitution allows states to develop their own state constitution that is less restrictive, but not more restrictive of the United States Constitution. Why should a Lansing charter be any different? Why should any of our charters be any more restrictive than the state constitution? If any of you can answer that, I'd be more than happy to listen. Thank you.
Thank you. That was our final speaker signed up. So what's that? That takes us to the approval of the minutes.
Motion be in order to approve the September 24th, 2024 minutes. It's been moved and supported. Are there any changes, additions, deletions to the minutes? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Minutes are approved. We are to officers' report. I just have a quick update regarding an issue that Commissioner Lopez raised, and that's the involvement of the Lansing School District, the junior school board, in some of the work that we're doing here in the commission. We were supposed to have a meeting a week ago with the junior board, but it turned out that was their first organizational meeting, and there really wasn't time to get through that meeting with what we needed to do. So next Friday on the 18th, Commissioner Lopez, myself, and the vice chair will be meeting with the e-board of the junior board to talk about this. We will have the League of Women Voters there putting on their review of the charter. And then either on the 1st of November or the 8th of November will be their first full board meeting. And we will also attend that and then just kind of play it as it goes. But there is a lot of interest. The administration in the school district is very supportive. And so look forward to doing that. If there are other commissioners that want to be involved and get involved, please let me know, and we'll get you invited to the meetings. And that is the only report I have. Madam Vice Chair, do you have a report?
No report.
Mr. Clerk.
I would just highlight that you have written communications in your packet.
Okay, thank you. Now we are to presentations, just by way of bringing everybody up to speed. As you know, at our last meeting, we started discussions basically focusing on the strong mayor form of government and the city manager form of government, just having a discussion about that and trying to get some more information. We did set up some presentations tonight. We have Mayor Shore here to present to us, as well as the former Lansing City Council President, Carol Wood, who will be joining us remotely for her presentation. The presentations aren't necessarily meant to talk about the form of government or the number of awards or whatever. It's just to have a general discussion and get ideas from these folks about their view of the charter, how effective it is, what changes they may recommend that we might want to look at. And certainly we can ask and have the ability to ask questions and do a little Q&A after the presentation. So with that, we have the mayor here tonight. Mr. Mayor, if you want to come down, have a seat. Either one. The choice is yours.
Tables have turned.
Yeah. Thank you for coming down and give us your time. I would also like to note we did invite former Mayor Hollister as well as President Garza Both were unable to make it, but we'll have a standing invitation for them in the future if they'd like. So, Mr. Mayor.
Sure. Thank you,
Comments, please.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. It's great to see you all. I didn't actually have a whole lot prepared, but then I thought this morning I was thinking about it, so I wrote down a few notes. I'm happy to send this to you all as well. I mean, certainly for me, this is more about Q&A and what questions you all have for me. So I'll say some of these things, and then you can ask me about this, or really whatever you want. It's your show. In terms of the charter, I mean, I've been fairly happy with the charter. I mean, I think that it works pretty well. I do think there need to be some tweaks, which is why I wanted to be sure to get some information out. But I do think it's worked pretty well. Although you do have an opportunity to, like I said, change a few things. I know you've been talking about the strong mayor system, and I am a supporter of the strong mayor system. I always have been. I believe that we have a president and a Congress, we have a governor and a legislature. And I do believe in having a mayor and a council, separation of powers where the council is the policy-making body, the legislative body, and the mayor is the CEO and administrator. And I believe in those roles very strongly. I know that in my experience as council debates things and makes laws, makes ordinances, passes resolutions, I weigh in as asked, and I weigh in if I see that I think there's any issues, and then it's the process, right? The process works. It's a majority of council, and if I don't like the end product, I can veto it, and if they don't like my veto, they can override me with 2/3, and I think that process works pretty well. In the same way, again, it works in the legislature, it works at the federal level. I know some cities use a manager system, and it's more parliamentary, and I've never supported that before I was mayor. When for me, it makes sense that we do things in a federalist way as is done in other levels. With that, I also agree with a lot of the language that's in the charter right now. A lot of the language in the charter basically is based off of a strong mayor system and indicates a mayor being the chief administrative person and council being the legislative body. There's language in 3207 that says that council has the right to make inquiries of city officers and employees and receive specific information in response. And then it goes on in the next section to clarify that this right is limited to establishing establishing policy that is legislative in nature. So in essence, saying council has the right to ask questions that are legislative, and I agree with that. I think that they should. It also has language that says that administrative activities for city council is limited to its own staff, and they shall give no direct orders to any city officer or employee, and I agree with that as well, because I do believe that the mayor is the chief executive officer, and council members don't tell them how to run their department, but if they do have policy before them, then they get the answers for the legislative action. So I do agree with a lot of that. When you look at the role of the mayor, I do think there are some good tweaks that could be changed. Again, small things. As mayor, I have attended council meetings. I think it's important. But I do think it's a little awkward in the charter right now because the mayor or their representative has to attend, but doesn't really have a role. I don't think the mayor should have a vote on council. I think we should continue to have an independent mayor, but I do think there should be language in there that the mayor has the ability to discuss and debate things that come up, providing information from the administration's perspective. Every council I've had has always granted me that authority, that permission. Every city council president has always recognized me as I've asked. But that's not necessarily specified. The only thing specified in the charter right now is that the mayor or their representative has to be there, and you get comment in the beginning and comment in the end, but there's no mayoral participation in the discussion or debate. So I do think that is something that should be rectified one way or the other. Either don't make the mayor be there and then it's the mayor's choice, or if you're saying the mayor has to be there, then allow them to be part of the discussion and debate. So I do think that's important. I think we should update some of the language in the charter. There's language on temporary absence of the mayor, and I do think that should reflect our technology of the day. If I'm in Detroit, if I'm at a conference, I still have my phone with me and I am still accessible 24 hours a day. So I am still the mayor. I think that is what the law says. That's what state law says. It's what the judiciary has determined. Now, I do think there should be language in there on incapacitation. If the mayor is incapacitated, if, God forbid, I have a stroke and I am not able to perform the duties, then you need someone else. And right now, it would be the council president for statutory reasons. That's what's in the charter now. So I think that conversation should be had on what is temporary absence. I don't like that term. I like the term of incapacitated, because then the mayor can't do the job and someone else needs to do it, and then it's a matter of who does it. Is the council president? Is it the, a senior staffer? I think that's worth having the conversation. I think that the veto timing should increase a bit. Right now it's 3 days, and I think that the mayor needs the ability to really review things that pass. So I would recommend 7 days, giving a full week, 7 calendar days, giving a full week before a veto has to be issued. That way, even if there's a council meeting the next week, they would have the ability to deal with it. But the mayor gets a little more time than just, a late Monday night, having Tuesday, Wednesday, and then having it done by Thursday. I do think having a little more time is important. One of the things that's come up a few times is, and I think this is part of the manager strong mayor debate, is the one staffer required of the mayor in the charter. Right now, the mayor is required to have an executive assistant, and the way that's always been determined is that that person is the council liaison. That's really all it has to be. I think that it would be smart to have something in there with the mayor having some form of a senior staffer. That would be, whether you call it a chief of staff, whether you call it a deputy mayor, whether you call it a chief administrative officer. I would be hesitant to put requirements in the charter, because from my experience, different senior staffers have had different expertise. I've had one that is very good with administration. I've had one that's very good with finance. I've had one that's very good with understanding management skills. All of that, I think the mayor needs to determine what that skill is in terms of helping he or she or they be the CEO day to day. So I do think that you could change that. You could leave it, and I think it's going to happen anyway, but that could be something that specifies that we've got a senior staffer that is assisting the mayor. And looking at some of the other provisions, I know that this has come up and people have mentioned it to me. I'm not really weighing in much on the council. I think that's for council to weigh in on, and council members. I will say it is a bit odd or awkward to have an even number of council members. And I get that coming from the legislature and coming from the governor and the Congress. I think having an odd number, whether it's 7 or 9 or whatever it is, makes more sense just for numbers, or leaving it at an even number and putting a tiebreaker in. For the state Senate, they have 38 members, and then the lieutenant governor can break a tie. For the U.S. Senate, they have 100 members, and the vice president can break a tie. If you wanted to leave it at 8 and have the mayor break a tie, only if there's a tie, something like that. I don't really know the best way to do that, but I do think having an odd number is probably the most effective way to make sure that you're not falling in with a tie and things are failing at a 4-4 vote. I just think that's awkward, but that's just my opinion. I put some stuff down with advisory boards. I do think that they should continue to be advisory to the mayor and council. One of the things that I struggle with is having an advisory board of volunteers who may want to manage a department, and I think we have professional staff for that. I think of the police and the fire advisory boards having hiring and firing ability. That concerns me. So I think you could take a look at that in terms of what they should and shouldn't have in terms of volunteers having really authority and power over professional staff. There is a provision that says that the city clerk should have to maintain a list of boards and commissions, which they do, and they do great. But with that, I don't know that it makes sense for the mayor to provide a yearly report to council, because we have a daily report that our city clerk does, and does very, very well, and does it online in real time. So I think the report is a little outdated. It's something from before we had a daily reporting. There is a provision, and I understand it, I just disagree with it. The provision is that city employees cannot serve on boards and commissions. I understand the concept. We don't want a mayor or a council or anyone to be putting their own employees on a board or commission and then telling them what to do. That being said, all city employees not being able to serve is a mistake, in my opinion. We have folks in public service. We have folks in neighborhoods and in parks. We have folks that live in the city of Lansing and should be able to serve on a board or commission. If you wanted to change that to folks in the mayor's office or city council cannot serve on boards or commissions, I get that. That's fine. But why shouldn't the parks employee be able to serve on a board or commission? I'm not going to fire that person if they don't do what I want, because we have collective bargaining agreements. Unions would go crazy, and rightfully so. I think we are missing out on a lot of talent on our boards and commissions by not allowing our citizens to serve. And I know that because the first year we were in, we tried to put someone on without realizing, and we were told by the city attorney, you can't do that. That also extends to the Board of Water and Light. They're seen as one of ours. We wanted to put an employee from the Board of Water and Light on a commission, and we were told you can't do that because the Board of Water and Light is an extension. Now, we weren't going to put the employee on the Board of Water and Light. That would be a mistake. But we should have been able to put that employee on the Planning Commission, I think, or I don't remember. But again, the city attorney told me no. This is one of those cases where the city attorney told me no, and I greatly disagreed, but that's the attorney's opinion, and that's what we take. The Board of Review, and again, I'm giving you a few things that my department directors have given to me. The Board of Review is 3 members, and every once in a while you have a member or two that can't show up, and I know our assessor has asked for the option to have alternates as part of the Board of Review. Certainly when we're reviewing taxes and claims and things, you don't want to lose a quorum. So it would be nice to have alternatives or alternates, maybe 2, or just allow for there to be alternates in the charter, and then that can be governed by ordinance. I don't care, but right now it's basically prohibited, and I think it's just restrictive. I believe that term limits as part of the advisory boards and commissions would be a mistake. I do. I think that there is a good combination that we have on boards and commissions of folks with experience and folks that are new and fresh. I know this came up as part of the Board of Water and Light, and I can tell you in my 7.5 years, we've got 4 people that have been there since before I was mayor, and we've got 4 people that are new, and we actually had 1 other that was new. So you've got half the board that is new and fresh, and you've got half the board that has experience that I think we would want to have. So I think that the term limit is every 3 to 4 years. The mayor's got to send someone to council, and council has to approve or not approve them. So I don't think that's a good idea personally, but you do what you're going to do, certainly. And then I know it can be controversial, but I like that members continue to serve even after their time is up. They serve until they resign, or they serve until they are replaced. I understand the idea of setting a fixed term, but the reality is we send a lot of folks to vetting, and then it takes some time, and sometimes, I'll give you an example, sometimes someone didn't have an income tax obligation, so they didn't file an income tax form. Well, then we go to put them on a board, and we find out they didn't file their income tax form, so we have to go back, and we have to get them to file the tax form. It's fairly common. It's not like they weren't paying their taxes, they just didn't file the form. So a lot of times, we need folks to continue to serve even though we are sending someone else to council. If you want to put a limit on that, fine. I know there have been some complaints about someone continuing to serve for more than months. So you want to put a limit on that, fine, but I would not just say there's a fixed term and then they're done. Otherwise, we're going to have a lot of vacancies on boards and commissions, and that would concern me. The only other thing, I know there's a whole list of possible boards and commissions in the charter. You've got your possible departments, not boards and commissions, possible departments in the charter. Certainly, we need to have certain specific ones. We need to have a fire department. We need to have a police department. We need to have our public service department. But there's a whole variety of others that are recommended. I don't know that we should have recommended in the charter. especially because there's no environmental office, we have all of those pieces baked into our departments. I just think that should generate some review, and there should, the ones that we absolutely need to have, we should have. And if you want to put that in the charter, I have no problem with that. I'm concerned when people see things in there that are recommended, and then they think, why isn't the city doing that when we are? But it's baked into another department. The only other thing I have, I know, and maybe the clerk, I saw some of these, and maybe he would agree, maybe he wouldn't. I think some of our special elections language is a little bit off, especially like the Charter Commission, when we tried to elect the Charter Commission and it didn't comply with state law. So I think you all should take a look at what's in state law and what's in charter, and we should certainly match state law, or just put in there that elections will match state law because they may change state law. But it certainly was frustrating when we had people saying, hey, you have to do a charter election within, 60 days, 90 days, and we said, no, we have to wait until there's actually a state election under state law, and that was very confusing. So I do think that we should match that. I also, this could be a little more controversial, but I've seen it in other cities like Grand Rapids. I think when we run elections, I think if there is more than two people running, and there's an August election, if one candidate gets more than 50%, I think they should be declared the winner. They do that in Grand Rapids. They do that in a few other cities. So that way, you've got more than 50% in the primary. Why not declare the winner because they've gotten more than 50%? Again, I know that some people won't like that, but I can also tell you that when I first won for mayor, I got 63% in the primary, and I got 73% in the general. And if I had that extra month and a half to set up an administration as a new mayor, that would have been gold. So I do think someone winning a majority of the election in a primary should be looked at as determined the winner. Again, I know that'll be controversial. The last piece I have there with elections is the charter says the city clerk has to maintain a printed journal for all, and I know, Chris, you have to do that. I would take that out. We have it all electronically. We have all our agendas and all of our minutes. I think that's a waste of time for the city clerk to maintain a printed journal when we have all of that electronically. Again, this is the result of an older charter having older language, and it's just never been changed. Other small things, the charter requires the public service director to be an engineer. I don't see the need for that. We're always going to have a city engineer. You can require we have a city engineer, but if you want to have a public service director who's a good manager, who's managing several, O&M, who's managing all kinds of different parts of our public service, I don't know that it should be required they are an engineer. We can be required to have a city engineer, but it doesn't necessarily have to be the public service director. In our case now, Andy Kilpatrick is an engineer, and he has to be, and he is the city engineer. But again, I think that's a bit more limiting than we should have. And then some of the other provisions, I know I sent you one, the discrimination provisions that we have in our charter, I think should be amended and fixed. I think we should add sexual orientation, gender identity, housing, and other factors to the non-discrimination and civil rights clause. I know the state just passed something on housing, but again, I think we should have that in there as rights that we can then use within our human rights ordinances. I know we have language in there that say contracts should only be 1 year, and I know why we did it. I think it's too limiting. I think contracts should be able to be either 3 or 4 years. If we chose 4 years as the term of a mayor's term, and if a mayor wants to hire someone for up to 4 years, I think they should be able to. It's a recruiting tool. As we talk to directors, whenever I hire directors, they're always concerned about a 1-year contract. We can do it with police and fire. We're allowed to do up to 3 years with police and fire, but that's the only two we can do it with in the charter. So I would either add others to allow to be up to 3 years, or even 4 years, because that's the term of a mayor, but whatever works. I just think that we're a little too limited. With our budget, one of the provisions we have in our charter, which is nowhere else, is that we have to break out our budget when we present it in personnel and in operating. I would prefer to take that out and just say that the administration has to provide one budget per department. We get a negative audit finding on this every year because sometimes personnel is off, sometimes administrative is off, and then we have to rearrange and work out the dollars. I think that the department should get a budget, and they should be able to use that for operating and personnel and manage what that looks like. But breaking it out into the two. I think it should just be one number, and then when we present it to council, will determine if that's the appropriate number or not, and then they pass a budget. I just don't see the need for the two being broken out. And again, that is something that we get an audit finding on every year. It's in 7107.3 is what is the provision that I saw when I read through the charter. Three other small things. One, we have a strict prohibition on employees being able to purchase things. Whenever you have extra equipment and other things, you have to go to sale for it. We had an issue where we upgraded our phones a few years ago, and we wanted to let employees buy their phones for $50, $60, and we couldn't. You have to actually give it to a nonprofit, or you have to put them out for sale. I don't know if maybe there's a number limit of $1,000, $2,000. We upgrade monitors. If somebody wants to buy their monitor, why shouldn't an employee be allowed to buy their monitor for fair market? I just think that's a little too restrictive. Again, if we upgrade computers and we get new computers, we have to either toss them or recycle them or give them to a nonprofit. Why not allow our employees to purchase them if we want at fair market? The second to last thing I have is when we pass our budget, the budget passes council with a majority vote. And then if we are going to do some kind of a supplemental, a lot of times we get grants throughout the year. The council members there know we get a lot of grants throughout the year, especially now. And then any grant that we pass is a supplemental appropriation and has to pass with a 2/3 vote. I don't wholly understand why that would have to be a 2/3 vote when the budget itself passes with a half. So I would recommend that anything coming throughout the future after the original budget passes would also pass with a 1/2 vote. And then finally, we have tax limits in our charter, and we have 20 mil tax limit under state law. And again, this is something where I think state law should match what we have. But I mean, we've been fine, so it hasn't really been an issue. It's just I'm always inclined to say that if state law is going to preempt us on something, we should probably have it reflected in the charter. That's what I've got. That's what I was able to put together this morning. Again, I can send you all of this. I have to put it together in a memo, but I had a little bit of time and thought I would put that together. So I did it as quickly as I could. And I'll take whatever questions, whatever you want me to do from here, Mr. Chairman. I'm at your will.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. That was a lot of good information, and I'm glad you could do it in the morning's work. So are there any questions for the mayor? Commissioner Bauer.
As we continue to look at governance models, and we just received some very interesting report from Mark Skidmore. But are you aware of any sort of hybrid model where you have strong mayor council form, but yet there's something in a charter that would, I don't even mean require, but then the mayor would hire a city manager, and maybe not called that. But do you think that has any merit in looking at that? What do you feel about that? I just have continued to be concerned over the many, many years that I was on the city council and have been around, that our city, we always need to have somebody who really knows how to run a city day to day, like a city manager, day to day administratively, while the mayor deals with, overarching issues. So any thoughts on that?
I do have thoughts, and the mayor is still the buck stops here, right? When I go door to door, or when I go to neighbor events and everything like that, they want to know what I'm doing. And even in other communities, I talk to a lot of mayors who are friends. I'm on the board for the U.S. Conference of Mayors, and even in manager systems, people still go to the mayor. Mm-hmm. At which point the mayor say, "I'm not allowed to do anything. We hire the manager, and the manager's everything." But the people are looking at their mayor. They are. And they're looking at their council members and their mayor. And I think that you ask what I think, and you ask what I know. And what I think is that is that the mayor needs to be a strong mayor, and
Right.
the mayor should absolutely have someone to help them. And again, if you want to put that in, I don't have a problem with that. The mayor should have a senior staffer. Now, again, I question any qualifications you put in the charter, because I've had a few different senior staffers. I've had a former city manager. I've had a former CS chief strategy officer and finance expert who was promoted. I've had a municipal expert. I had an attorney who was an HR and labor expert, and each of them brought different things to the table that helped me to be able to be the overarching and to be the guy that people go to with issues. So I don't have a problem with that. There's lots of different systems when I talk to people. You've got cities where there's a manager and the mayor is elected independently. You've got cities where there's a manager and the mayor is elected from council. You've got, I have not run across a hybrid where you have a strong mayor and some kind of hired manager as well. I think that would be conflict. If you had a council hiring a manager with a strong mayor, it'd be conflict. You'd have two people who think they're in charge. So I would question that. But again, changing the executive assistant to a senior staffer, and maybe that's the person that is responsible to work with council. Although again, I'd be hesitant to require that. I've got a deputy mayor, or not deputy, I have a chief administrative officer now who helps me to run the city, and I've got a different staffer who is the connection to council. I think we should have a staffer that's a connection to council, and that's a good practice for the mayor, which I've learned over years. And I also think you should have a senior staffer. But as long as I've been paying attention, so back to to Hollister, even back to Kavanaugh, every one of them has had a senior staffer or two. Hollister had two. I think Benavides had two. Verge had two. So everybody's got a senior staffer or two. So I think it happens naturally anyway. But if that's something that you feel comfortable putting into the charter to say a mayor has to have a senior staffer that reports to the mayor, but that has experience with municipal issues, something a little more vague, sure.
Commissioner Anderson.
I have lots of questions. So I don't know if you want me to just do one question. Just go. Okay.
I can write them down if you want.
Okay. So my first question is, how do you see the role of the mayor providing value to the city that a professional city manager couldn't?
I think that from my experience, everything I do is providing value to the city because that's the job, 24 hours a day. This is not I don't know if managers may have a 8 to 5 job and go home to their family. I know many managers don't live in the city. They don't experience what's going on directly. I remember when I was at the Municipal League, there was a manager, I'm not going to say what city because it's a little embarrassing, who said that he was the manager but he couldn't live there because he couldn't afford to live there. I thought that was the most insulting thing I had ever heard as a Michigan Municipal League employee. The mayor is responsible. When I go to, I used to say Rite Aid because we had a Rite Aid right by my house. We don't have it anymore. When I go to Walgreens, when I go to Family Dollar, I'm there, and my kids hate it, right? Because people approach me and say, hey, I don't like this, or I don't like this, or why did you make the streets 2 ways, or why don't you make the streets 2 ways, or my street didn't get plowed, or my street got plowed and I got plowed, my driveway got plowed right back in. I can go on the list, right? I hate potholes, or you just fixed my street, now people are going too fast. These are the things that I hear every day. And these are the things that we work on every day. And I think that that's the value of having a strong mayor. Somebody who people can talk to and has the ability to make change through an administration, or if there's a policy change, send a policy change to council, or to talk to council and say, hey, I think that there should be a policy change. And I work very well with our city council right now, I believe. I think that when I see things, I can report them to them. When they see things, they report them to me, and we're able to work together. Again, a city manager probably could do some of that. A city manager would report to council, and I assume would have to. Their only leverage, though, is they can fire a city manager. Outside of that, there's no leverage. So you have a non-elected person that can be fired by council, And again, I've seen that in cities. I'm sure it works. I think it works in smaller cities, although you do have a few. Grand Rapids has a city manager and an independently elected mayor who basically does it full time. Mayor Bliss is a full-time mayor and works very closely with her manager. Maybe there's your hybrid that sort of works, but again, she's going to lose at the end if the manager decides this is what we're doing. I think having a mayor who is one of the citizens, that is elected by the citizens, that is responsible to the citizens, that can be thrown out by the citizens. I think that's, for me, that's always been my opinion, that's the value.
Yeah.
You have more questions?
Yes.
Okay.
What does increased transparency look like from your office? Like, I know last meeting, a lot of people were saying, we prefer to have a strong mayor because there's accountability through elections, right? That we can just vote out a mayor who maybe we feel like isn't doing a sufficient job. But I think that oftentimes the average citizen doesn't actually know the ins and outs of like what the mayor's office looks like, right? And I just think that there's a lack of transparency, whether intentional or unintentional. And so if we wanted to increase transparency in an effective way, what do you think that would look like?
Well, as a charter issue, I think you shouldn't put anything like that in the charter because there's lots of different ways to do it. I can tell you when I first got elected, I had the attitude that we're going to do the job. I'm not going to worry about the media. I'm not going to worry about, I'm just going to do it and people are going to see that it's being done. And that was wrong. After a year or 2 years, people are like, what are you doing? We're like, oh my God, we've done so much. What are you doing? What do we do right now? We put out so much information with the avenues we have. We use social media, all of them. We use press releases and we count on the traditional media to put it out. We provide information to city council at official meetings. We do some limited mailers, but I don't have a budget to do. If I could do a newsletter every month, that would be great, but I don't have the budget to do that, and we don't have the budget at the city. We do our Lansing Living 3 times a year, which is a wonderful usage of kind of a printed material, and most of that is parks, but we try and put other things in there to let folks know. Some of it is counting on traditional media, and we know that we have some here, and more than our neighboring communities. We have several departments. Our police, I would argue our police department is more transparent than any other police department just about anywhere. Same with our fire department. We put out every time there's a shooting, we put out all the time to our own detriment, right? We put it out all the time and we're transparent, and then people think, oh my God, it must be terrible there, but many other communities don't put that out. And they don't get criticized for being anti-transparent, and nobody knows that, shoot, they have crime too. So we're using every tool in the toolbox right now. And again, maybe in the beginning we didn't because I just figured people would know. And I was wrong. But from my office, I can't speak for any other mayor, past or future, but we push out as much information as we can through social media, through Facebook, through Instagram, through, I don't know. We have staff that does that knows it a lot better than I do. We have a young lady who knows how to do that much better than I do.
Virginia's doing a great job.
Thank you very much. You know Virginia.
Yes.
She's been fantastic. Thank you for saying that, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
She's been fantastic, and she knows the stuff better. I always say with social media and things, hire a young person because I'm 49 years old, and I don't know. I don't know it as well, but my kid knows it. Virginia's doing a great job. Thank you for saying that.
Mm-hmm.
That's what transparency looks like to me.
Okay. And then I just had a few follow-up questions on some of the things that you specifically mentioned.
Sure.
So you talked a little bit about the mayor's role or not having a role at city council meetings. And I know Commissioner Washington mentioned last time, like, their council business meetings. So I guess I would ask, and I noticed, and I know we're not Detroit, and I hate comparing us to other cities, but I noticed that in Detroit's charter, they require their manager to hold public meetings, I think one in each ward, and then like one like at large or something like that. And maybe it's not the mayor having a role at council because they're council business meetings, but maybe it's like a requirement of, I think people are just looking to be engaged, right? And hear from you and the work that you're doing. and not in a performative way, but in like a true like community engagement way of I'm here in this space to hear your needs, but also like update on what we're doing. But I guess like what are your thoughts on something like that?
Yeah, in terms of the council meeting being a business meeting, absolutely, and it should be. Now, again, my opinion is the mayor may or may not have an opinion on an ordinance or resolution coming through. More often than not, I get asked in advance, which I always appreciate, but maybe I don't. Or maybe in the future, a mayor and a city council doesn't get along, and they pass something without the mayor having input, and then the mayor's avenue is to veto. But sometimes if the mayor can say, hey, why don't we change this or change this, then I could be supportive, that could prevent a veto and it could prevent conflict. I do think the mayor should have input into a discussion officially, on the record, in front of the cameras, and not just behind the scenes, should be able to. Again, I am not worried about that for me right now. Council has been, to me, fantastic. When I have something to say, I raise my hand, and the council president usually waits till the council members are done debating and then recognizes me, and I'm fine with that. But I worry that they don't have a role. In terms of meetings in the public, we do that now. Now, again, I don't know the language in Detroit. We do neighborhood summits quarterly, and maybe we need to present more information. I always ask people what questions do you have, and we put vendors together. So we do a lot of that now. We've done them on specific issues. We did a variety of them on roads. We do them on the budget every year. We do anywhere between usually 4 to 6. I think one year we did 8 meetings on the budget before we introduced the budget. One thing I noticed, you talk about transparency, one thing I noticed when I first came into office was that the only time that citizens got to weigh in on the budget was after the mayor presented it and when council was considering it. And I thought, why don't citizens have a chance to weigh in before the mayor presents it? So I asked our neighborhoods department to organize that, so we do. I would be hesitant to say they have to be very specific. If you said, in the mayor's language that the administration is expected to have meetings out in the community, I don't have a problem with that. I don't have a problem with that. Actually, I haven't even thought about it. That would be good for the boards and commissions. This comes up a lot at council, where the boards and commissions ask, or the council members will ask appointees, hey, do you, instead of just having a meeting in some building somewhere, will you go out into the community? And I think that's actually had a really good impact. Our police board of commissioners now does it 2 or 3 times or 4 times a year. They meet out in the community. I think our public service board does, and they go to different places. So again, I think when there are going to be meetings, having it out in the community, not necessarily just in City Hall. I know council does it. Council goes on the road, for 2 meetings for their budget time. So I think without putting specific, you have to have 4 every year, 1 in each ward or anything like that. I would be hesitant on that, just because I think there should be language in there on an administration or a mayor and a council, administration, a mayor, a council, and appointees all doing their best to do things in the public or outside of a city building and in the public where they can, or maybe. I don't know. I have to think about the language, because certainly I would do it if I did it at Foster as a city building, but I still feel like that's over on the east side, so not in City Hall.
And then I think I just have a couple more. I'm sorry, guys. So, and this is just really looking for clarification. I think I was going into this thinking like we have new departments that are not addressed in the charter, and like thinking about adding them in or adding even additional. And so I just want to clarify, your recommendation is that we actually shouldn't do that and we should only list the required ones.
Yes.
Okay.
I do think it's important to list the most important, the necessary ones. We have to have a police department. We don't have to have a department of neighborhoods. I, as an individual, believe we should absolutely have a department of neighborhoods, and if you put it in the charter, I wouldn't care, but we haven't always had one. We didn't have one before me, and we still had neighborhood staff. So I think you have to look and see what is, you can't even say statutorily mandated, because we are not mandated to have a police department. If you didn't put a police department in the charter and we didn't have a police department, the county would be responsible. That being said, I am not advocating to get rid of our police department, so you put it in there and I'm fine with that. So I think you all have to figure out what is the necessity.
Right. And then what does it look like when managing your staff? What does accountability look like between you and them? Do they have measurables? What does it look like when a department isn't performing, as well as maybe we as a community think they should, or you think they should? Like, what does that look like today?
With departments, a lot of it is governed by CBA. So you have employees, you have supervisors. The supervisors get to evaluate their employees. There's always a hit or miss when it comes to employee evaluations, because some people love them and some people think that they could be biased, and it's a way for equity to be trampled on a bit. So it's supervisor versus employee. I evaluate my department directors based on how I feel their performance is, and I meet with them I meet with many of them monthly, but at the end of the year, I have meetings with all of them to talk about what I think they're doing really well and what I think they can improve upon. Certainly at times, some people don't fit, and you have to have that conversation as well, and that can be an awkward and uncomfortable situation, but that's what being the boss is all about. It's not about being friends, it's about making sure the job's getting done. So I do that with my directors, but again, with employees, a lot of it is supervisory requirements through the CBA, and then being able to be challenged if there's things in there that they don't agree with, and the unions are very involved with that.
Okay. And then this is my last question.
It's okay. These have been great.
So for quasi-government organizations, we have the LEDC, DLI, LEPFA. Those are the three that come to mind. How do I ask this question? What does it look like when they're underperforming, right? Because they're not entirely a city government, right? And I know that like you are appointing the board, council is voting yes or no, right? But what does accountability look like for them outside of their board? And what does it look like for them to expand or retract on what they were originally designed to do?
Well, each of them has an ordinance, and each of them has an ordinance that talks about what they're supposed to be doing. So they have to follow their ordinance. There's the legal and there's the reality, right? The legal is they each have an appointed board, and their senior staff is directed by their appointed board. So yes, I appoint and council approves members to the DLI board, and the DLI director is hired by that board, evaluated by that board, is given a contract by that board, and that's the legal. Same with LEPFA, same with LEDC. As mayor, I do have input, and I talk to them about what I'd like to see. With LEDC, every year we have a contract with them, and the contract specifies the things that we'd like them to be working on. Now, in the beginning, the contract was like a wish list. It was like, here's 6,000 things you should be doing, and we're going to give you 3 staffers to do it. We've tried to scale that back a bit to what's real, and we've also given them more staff. So, that's kind of the legal, the reality is the boards evaluate the directors. And I know the boards take it very seriously. When we split off our LEDC, because we used to contract with LEAP, when we recreated the LEDC, which I believe in, that I believe we should have an EDC working just for us. It was very stressful for the board members because they hired the staff, they put together what they expected, and they came to me. The chair of the board at the time came to me. This is what we're going to do. I said, okay, it's good to know. So they all kind of keep me in the loop. LEPFA, again, they do the same thing with their senior staff. Right now they're looking at making their staff are permanent, although we have an RFP out for some of the services. The city can weigh in on some of that. Right now we're looking to see if there's someone that can do some management in the Lansing Center better than how we're doing it now. Maybe we can, maybe we can't. We have an RFP out, and we'll see. And again, there's intricacies of the contract with LEPFA. They have to be part of it, and we'll work through that. So a lot of it is independent for them, and that's the way it is under state law. These are all organized under state law. We've also got several boards and commissions that kind of deal with that. We've got corridor improvement authorities, several of them that have hired their own staff, and again, I don't get involved in that. The board and the volunteer committees get to do that. but we have staff that works with them. I mean, if they go out of bounds, we have a city attorney, and our city attorney staff makes sure that they are doing what they're supposed to be doing. Now, some of our boards, our pension boards, LEPFA, LEDC have some of their own legal staff, but again, anything that they do has to be agreed to by our city attorney, otherwise we're at risk.
Okay. Sorry, I keep hitting my mic. I have a follow-up question to that. So if I said one of these quasi-government organizations was maybe operating within the law, but legality doesn't equal morality, right, as we know, what would the process, other than going to their board, look like to say, like, we want to change this ordinance, going to council?
Yeah, council, yeah,
Okay.
council, and this is the perfect example of council being the lawmakers.
Yeah.
So council would amend the ordinance, and they've done that, right? We added a few people to some boards. We added to our LEPFA board. We added a member of our LEPFA board from the CVB, and then the CVB, agreed to give some money and things. Council's done that, and I think that is a policy conversation with the city council, with the legislative body, as it should be, in my opinion.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
You bet. Thank you.
Questions? Commissioner Washington.
Thank you, Mayor Shore. I'm just pretty blunt, so please,
That's
know
not
me
new.
well enough. Don't take it personal.
It's not new.
First of all, from your presentation, it did appear to me that you would like to see the mayoral position even stronger than what it is. And unfortunately, what we are getting from the public is the reason they want a city manager is because they think the current mayor system has too much authority. So as I've been going through this, I've actually been looking at some things that I do think there is an overstretch from the mayoral position, not you, the position.
It's fine.
As far as this chief of staff or whatever, I don't care what you call it, we already have it in the charter. It's called the executive assistant, and that position can be used any way the mayor chooses for it to be used. I would never be comfortable with it being called deputy mayor. The people have not elected a deputy mayor. But chief of staff, senior staff, I mean, we've always had that. And Randy Hannon is a perfect example. We know he knew the guts of the city, and he ran it, and love him or hate him, he was wicked smart, and he knew what he was doing. And you've had some good people in that position also. So I don't even really think that's an issue for us in our charter. But what I do have serious concerns with, Andy, is the way that appointments are made to our boards and commissions. Way too often, they are done as political favors. They are done for people that want to run for office so they can put it on their literature, even though they've only been put in that board. And I can give you several examples of that, just so they can put it on their lit. And they were only there 3, 4, 5 months. And it's a political ploy, and I have a huge problem with it. And so we have to figure out a better way to do that. I don't know if we go to 9 wards, if we have the 9 council members, get one person from each of their wards or something, but this has to stop. And as far as you saying, you have a problem with volunteers who want to run the department, which I get. I actually question what is the point of most of these advisory boards, because they are just volunteers. They are not experts in the field. They are citizens that we let them be involved in the city, which is why I kind of have a problem with your thing of city employees. This is actually supposed to be for the everyday citizen to bring in the voice of everyday citizens. But they aren't taken seriously. I've sat on some of these boards and really you show up, you listen to half hour of what the director of the department has to say and you go, sounds good. And so I find that to be problematic. So these boards and commissions, they are something I'm really going to be looking at. And you say that the DLI board and a couple other ones, they hire the director, and yet you have a problem with the police and fire commission having that same authority. They don't hire, but you can't fire somebody without their approval. And we have to acknowledge that a commission is much different than an advisory board. It should have more authority, it should have more say. An advisory board is just that. It's an advisory board.
But-
And, so I think we need to make that differentiation. And as far as council meetings, I don't think the mayor should ever have a role during a council meeting. That is their business meeting. We have to keep the separation of the branches of government. And if the mayor is in there weighing in on their meeting, that's not separation of government. But do you have to be there? Probably not. I think probably not.
Yeah. Again, I think it should be one or the other.
Yeah.
I think we should make a decision.
If they
One or the
want
other.
any information, which is really why you're there, they can request that beforehand or request it afterwards.
There are many mayors that don't attend
Yeah.
city council meetings.
And
Again, the
I think that's something
Yeah.
we should look at, that
I think- yeah.
requirement. But I really think, they don't go to your executive staff meetings and weigh in on what you're doing, and I don't think you should be in there weighing on what they do.
Yep. I think it should be one or the other.
I
Yeah,
do too.
I served in the legislature, and I don't think I ever saw that. Well, maybe once I saw the governor on the House floor.
Yeah,
So,
I have
one or the
no
other.
problem with that. I agree with you on that.
In terms of the
If you
others,
want to send somebody, that's different.
yeah. Again, we can disagree respectfully. We have in the past. We will again, and I always appreciate.
No.
It's happened, Commissioner. I will say, in terms of the advisory board, and maybe I wasn't clear. We certainly have advisory boards and we have administrative boards. The Board of Water and Light is an administrative board. DLI is an administrative board. It's quasi-governmental, as was said. Same with LEPFA and LEDC. Our Planning Commission under state law has specific responsibilities. I feel that's different than the ones that you have listed in the charter now as advisory boards.
Right.
Advisory boards, whether it's DEI, whether it's HRCS, whether it's, we have several advisory boards. What do I think the purpose is? I think the purpose is to put citizens on to give recommendations to council and the mayor because they are also in the community. That's my opinion. Again, that's what I think works best. Now, yes, if there is an administrative board. Now, police and fire is a little different. Those, I believe, are more advisory, although they can prevent firing and they have to recommend candidates for hiring. So they do have a role in that I don't think my opinion is not proper, but we can very easily disagree on that. And again, we'll disagree on city employees. I think that we have many city employees that are Lansing residents, and I do believe they should have the ability to serve as long as there's not a direct supervisory relationship where someone could tell them, do this or you're fired. So we can disagree on that. That's okay.
Yeah, and maybe on an advisory board that isn't connected to the
And that could be
department
that.
they work with.
Yeah, maybe it's that.
But I don't know. I guess I truly wonder the value of these advisory boards. I really do.
Yeah.
So, and it's something I'm going to think about and research. And so, and I don't think you have to get along with council.
I know.
You have to be respectful.
Correct.
And you have to be professional, but it doesn't have to be, as we discussed, kumbaya by any means.
No, when I say get along,
There's checks and balances.
when I say get along, we don't always agree. I had to veto something in the budget last year. Again, it's respectful. I have a very good relationship with council, and I'm proud of that. That doesn't mean we're always going to agree. Maybe I'll agree with 3, but not 5. Maybe I'll,
You've always had a good relationship
yeah,
with council.
and I appreciate that.
So,
And it's,
and even on the things we've disagreed on, it's always been respectful
Yes.
and professional, and I always appreciate it. But I am absolutely in favor of a strong mayor model, but I do think we have to tweak it.
okay. And with the executive assistant, you're right. The executive assistant could absolutely play that role. If you left it the way it is, I would have no problem with it. I know Commissioner Bauer and others. I want to offer that as an idea, but the way it's always been, like you said,
That's what it's always been used
Randy
for.
Hannon, you had, Verge had 2, and again, Benavides had 2, and Hollister had 2. It can work, it can be tweaked, or it can work.
Let me ask you this, though, is when we're talking about the departments, and take yourself out of this equation.
Okay.
We do have personalities that love to build empires. So if you had police and fire as mandatory departments, do you think there should be a cap on how many departments there should be?
No.
Because I
No.
can see that getting out of hand.
I don't think there should be a cap. I had not heard that before. No, I don't.
Okay.
I think that can be too unruly.
Okay.
I think that the mayor with the, council's got to approve changes through executive order, or they can disapprove changes through executive order. But no, I don't think so at all. We had when I came in, we had a planning and development department, and we wanted to break out neighborhoods, and then we put arts into it, and we put citizen engagement. No, I don't think there should be a cap.
Okay. I mean, we only have so much money. You know what
Agreed.
I'm saying?
I agree.
So,
No, I agree.
okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Simmons.
Yes, good evening, Mayor Shore. How are you doing?
evening.
I have just 4 concerns from what I've heard from the citizens of Lansing. And one, of course, Commissioner Washington touched on with the appointments of the boards and commission. Obviously, a lot of people feel that it's unfair due to a political favor, or they lack the connections to be appointed. So how do you feel that we can create a process or a system to remedy that in an equitable way for all citizens? Because we have a lot of citizens who want to be engaged, want to have a voice, but they don't feel like they have a vehicle to participate.
We have, I don't know how you put that in the charter. I mean, we have got an application process, and anytime we have an opening, I tell my appointments person, send me everybody who's applied.
And
I don't know how you address that in charter.
well, like for instance, I did serve on the Board of Ethics for 12 years, and each council member gets to appoint one person, and then you get to appoint 4.
Correct.
How would you feel about that with all boards and commissions?
I hadn't really thought about it. I like the system where the mayor appoints and then the council gets to dispose.
That's fair.
That's my preference. I feel like it works pretty well. I think the system works well as it is. I mean, that allegation is always going to be made.
Right.
I appoint
But it
people-
creates more representation, though, if
I-
it's coming from the wards.
I appoint people all the time who I've never met before,
Okay.
who we appoint based on documentation. I will admit that sometimes we don't have applicants for boards or commissions, in which case I will reach out to people and say, hey, do you want to apply? People who I think would be good for it. Honestly, I think the system works pretty well. But right now we have a lot of folks, we have a lot of boards that are full. And I get people who are like, how come you haven't appointed me to this board? I'm like, because it's full. Or because I've got 4 other people who I've committed to. And again, when people send in applications, we look and see who's applied. So if you want to put in there has to be a system of applications online and candidates have to be considered from the applications or something like that. I think it's happening anyway, but I think that having all of council being able to review all of the members and then making a decision up or down on a mayoral appointment, I think that works. You have 8 council members now that all represent the whole city. If you let the ward members do it, then you are ignoring the 4 at large. They are not having a say in those 4. I think we are one city. Even though we have 4 wards, I think we are one city. And I think the mayor elected by the citizens of the city gets to propose, and then council elected by the citizens of the city, 4 by ward and 4 at large, get to decide if they agree or not. And I think that system works pretty well. And again, there's always going to be allegations, and I don't hear that all that often, but I hear from people who say, how come I haven't been put on this board that I want? And the answer usually is it's full, or I will put you on next, or in 2 people, or that's where I get in trouble. If I say I'll put you on next, and then, it's 6 months later, and now you have other people who are maybe more qualified. That's an issue that I have to deal with. Honestly, more often than not, most often, I get council members, ward members, who come to me and say, hey, I'd like this person serving in a spot. And I'd say almost always, not always, almost always, I say sure. A few times we've got people that are already committed to the spot, and I tell them next time, or I'll put them in the at-large. But council members can have a say right now if they choose to, and I think many of them do.
Okay. And do you consider diversity when you're during your appointments?
We do. We like to see diverse folks that represent the city. So we do. Now, again, a lot of times I look at an application, and the application doesn't say black, white, Latino. It doesn't say LGBT. It doesn't say age, right? It doesn't say a lot of that. So I'll look at applications, But we look at it from time to time to make sure that the boards are diverse and representative of the community, and sometimes we fall short. But we do our best. A lot of times we'll ask folks, this is where we'll ask folks for recommendations from time to time. We do our best, both with boards and commissions and employees, to be honest with you.
Okay. My next question, lack of responsiveness from the mayor, city departments, and city council, especially when dealing with FOIA requests. How do you think it would be in the best interest to impose a timeline?
There's timelines in state law. That's already there. For FOIA requests, timelines are in state law, and we should comply with it. And I know our attorneys absolutely do their very best, and if they don't, we're actually subject to penalties. So that's already in existence.
Okay. That there has been an issue with that, with responsiveness from the mayors and the city departments, city council. But then when we talk about lack of timely public notice when city projects impact neighborhoods, obviously we just experienced that with the MLK reconfiguration project. The citizens on the west side felt very disenfranchised. They didn't feel that they were informed in a timely manner. How would you address that?
And again, I would disagree with the concept. To be honest with you, we had people on both sides. We had people that are very aggressively for it and very aggressively against it. We held several public meetings. People they didn't like it, and that's okay. Those folks ended up, in essence, winning, right? The project didn't move forward because we asked and more citizens were opposed than were for it. But I had people who were emailing me saying, please move forward with this and don't listen to the few people that are against it. I had people emailing me saying, please don't listen to the few people that are for it. Leadership means talking to the community, listening to the community, and decide what's best for the city. And we did a lot of outreach. And at the end of the day, when we first proposed it, we didn't think there would be any problem. We thought that people would want this. And when we started hearing concerns, we always hold public hearings. I think we held 2 or 3. Our public service folks did. But then when we started hearing concerns, I said, we're gonna postcard the west side. We're gonna postcard folks in the area, and we're gonna see. And when we did, the responses came back. People didn't want the medians to go away. So we didn't take them away. I overturned the decision and said, we're not going to take them away. Now, right after that, I heard from all the people who wanted it, and I heard from drivers who said, I really think this would be a better system. And I mean, you're always going to hear on both sides. And anyone who's you all know this, right? Anyone who's been in an elected position knows we're decision makers, and we have to make decisions based on the information we have. I do believe in sharing with the public and getting input. But at the end of the day, I heard from both sides, passionately from both sides. Everywhere I went, I heard from both sides. And we made that decision that we were going to put it on hold. And should it come up again, we will certainly go back out and ask folks, what questions they have. But at this point, I don't have plans to do that. And we do that with everything, most everything. All of our departments that do things that affect citizens, our public service department holds hearings they hold public meetings like that on a variety of things. This is part of the transparency question. So this is what we do, and anything that goes to council, they have to have 30 days, I believe, for ordinances, and we post in the newspaper as required by law. So I think that you're never going to make everybody happy, and if you did, then you may be doing something wrong.
Okay. And my last question, related to your advisory boards, I sat on your Board of Ethics as well as your DEI inaugural board. And as a DEI member, many people on that board resigned because they felt that their recommendations were not being taken under advisement. How do you change that process where people feel like these are volunteers, they're taking their time to give their input, but then once presented, they're either ignored or they're basically ignored, and then obviously the DI board, the original board, was dissolved.
Yeah, that wasn't an official city board. That was a mayoral. That was something that we created as a mayoral advisory board. That is not an official city board. There is no official anything. I just get to say, as mayor, I'm asking folks to give me their thoughts. As you know, and I've said many, many times, we took those opinions. We actually made changes from those opinions. This was a technology issue. I got them in November. I wrote a whole email with a response saying, here's thank you for this. This is what we'll do. This is what I have concerns about because of budget. And for some reason, and it didn't send. And when I was asked in March, why didn't I respond? I said, I did respond. And I went back and looked, and there it was in my drafts. So I sent it out. This was all in the city pulse several times. So I sent it out in March. We hired the city's first DEI director as a result. Now, an advisory board is just that, advisory. City council may not do what they want, the mayor may not do what they want. It doesn't mean that they're setting policy. It means that they're providing advice. And I think it's up to the elected official. You may have a mayor or a council person who says, thank you for your advice, I'm not doing any of it. And that's their right as the elected official. Whenever we get information, again, I take it all into account and I do the best I can to listen and evaluate and go from there. We have an arts commission that provides us many recommendations. Many of them we've done, some of them we haven't. We have a neighborhood advisory board that gives us recommendations. We have an HRCS advisory board that gives us recommendations, and many of them, most of them, we do. Some of them we don't. Again, that's the decision of a leader. I mean, for the MIDAC that we had, that was just the mayor's advisory board. That really, again, it just. There was a different time, and that was a very complicated time, and there were people who resigned, and that's their right to resign. But we now have a DEI board of 8 members, an official DEI board that was created by City Council, and again, they meet, and they are the DEI board, and they bring issues. I don't tell them what to talk about. Some people come to me and say, why don't you tell them what to talk about? And I say, that's not the idea here. The idea is these are citizens who are bringing issues on their own. That original MIDAC actually brought some recommendations that the DEI board now is talking about. Disability, for a few other issues that are not just the racial issues that were coming up at that time. There were a lot of more issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and they're all being discussed, and I think they should be. But I also think it should be from the grassroots up, giving it to us, and then the policymakers have to make a decision. Does council want to change the ordinance based on advice, or do they not? And does the mayor want to put something in the budget based on advice? Can we afford it? I get a lot of recommendations from advisory boards that will cost a lot of money. Council gave me a budget request of about $4 million. Now, again, they'll be the first ones to tell you this is our wish list. Doesn't mean that we expect the mayor to increase the budget by $4 million because we don't have it. But this is their wish list, and that's fine. And a lot of that was based on the Public Service Board and other boards giving advice. I believe in that advice, but I also believe that sometimes you take it and sometimes you can't. And if I had the money tree, I would do all of it, but we have to be responsible with the taxpayer dollars. So we do the best we can. I would never purposely ignore recommendations, but again, some mayors might. So I don't know how you rectify that. You can't mandate that someone take up recommendations and respond other than yes, I've received your recommendations. I think that would be difficult to do in the charter.
Thank you.
You bet.
Other questions? Commissioner Lopez? No. Commissioner Lopez.
Excuse me.
Well, I just have one question, Mr. Mayor, and this may be pie in the sky, but I'll ask it anyway. Do you believe that there should be an annual meeting between the mayor and the council to kind of discuss each other's goals and objectives for the year and come up maybe with a overarching goal setting on those things that both bodies agree?
I believe that council and the mayor should meet. It's always a challenge because if you want to have kind of a work group meeting, you don't always want that to be a public work group meeting. You want to be able to bounce ideas back and forth, but you can't do that because of Open Meetings Act.
Yeah.
I meet.
I should have said notwithstanding the Open Meetings Act.
Right, exactly. I think that that the system works pretty well now in terms of. I think when you do that once a year, it ignores a lot of things that come up throughout the year. Even I talked about the budget priorities I get from council in October. I think almost every year by March when we introduce our budget, there's something else that's come up. I'll give you an example. A few years ago, the council sent a budget priorities. It was something we reviewed, and then I think the month before, a councilwoman brought up the idea of cold cases, and that was what she wanted us to fund. It wasn't in the budget priorities, but it was. I think it needs to be a little more fluid. My first year I came in, I did brown bag meetings with council monthly, and that kind of became quarterly because we didn't have the attendance because council members work, which I 100% get, and they have a lot of meetings, so they couldn't make a lot of those. I do find it important to try and meet with council when I can. I meet with council leadership once a month, and we're trying to reset the brown bags to quarterly. So I do think there should be interaction, and I don't have a problem with interaction being required. We should have the council and the mayor all having conversations about issues that are coming up. When I meet with council leadership, I ask them about things that are coming up, and they ask me about things, and we are able to figure things out as they have to navigate their agendas for council. So I do think there should be interaction, but in terms of goal setting, that concerns me because I think that's, there should be policy that is set by the council and decided by the council, and there should be administration of that policy by the administration. And I guess if that were to go off the rails, then yeah, they should have a meeting between the two of them.
Well, yeah, those things can happen, but, and things change during the year.
Yeah.
But I think it would at least get it to a good start, and I think that what you're doing is fine. And the Public Meetings Act is
Yeah.
something very important.
Like I always respect your opinions, Commissioner.
But you could have that discussion here
Yeah.
and agree to disagree.
Yeah,
Politely.
absolutely. 100%.
It would still be in the public.
Like, you've always been one of the more respectful people that I know, and certainly, again, we can disagree on that, but again, I appreciate your thoughtfulness on that. I know that the school board does that with the superintendent, and there's value to having those conversations. I just think that it's a little different with a strong mayor system, but again, that's just my opinion.
Just, I guess, one other question I have, or maybe a comment. On terms of boards and commissions, especially commissions, when something happens in the city, and it's not just now, but it's kind of historical, something happens in the city and there's a task force put together.
Sure.
When you have a commission, fire commission or police commission, that could have done that work instead of building it outside of what we have. And sometimes those members of those commissions feel like, what are we? What's the deal?
I don't think anything that the mayor does precludes boards and commissions from doing it on their own. I think a board and commission is there to advise the city, the council, and the mayor and the entities. And we've never done anything to diminish that. We've had a few different mayoral advisory boards, and usually it's for something that there is not a city board or commission. Again, the DEI committee became the DEI committee after a mayoral advisory board, whether it was successful or not. The arts, the official city arts commission became a commission after we created that as a mayoral advisory board. It was almost like a precursor. It was like, hey, let's try this out and see if it works. And if it does, you can make, we'll propose an official city board. Sometimes they will. Sometimes you have city boards that feel that their responsibilities overlap, and you have some city boards that try and take up issues that other city boards believe is theirs. So we get that between official city boards too. Doesn't preclude anyone from taking up something on their own as well.
Just thinking of being an employee with Human Relations and having an advisory board,
Sure.
which was actually a board, not an advisory board to begin with, and the things they did and the things that happened, which they were not a part of it when it was right in their bailiwick, that to have done.
This is before, I think this is before my time.
That's kind of,
Yeah.
the board members felt like, well, what are we here for then?
Yeah.
So, just an observation.
Thank you.
Commissioner Dowd.
All right. Hello. So I don't know if you had the opportunity to read the proposed language for Board of Water and Light review that we've received.
I have not.
From the community, and we heard tonight some comments about that. So I want to give you an opportunity to talk to us if you've got some feedback on the Board of Water and Light. The conversation now is, or not now, the conversation has been brought to us, whether the advisory board is correct, if it needs to be, administrative board is correct, or advisory is the right path, along with some other language changes. But assuming as the CEO of the city, right, what does that relationship look like to you? The most recently, we heard people come in and talk to us about the rate changes, right? And they didn't feel that, as we talked about, people giving public comment or having an opportunity to give feedback it fell on deaf ears in many cases is what it felt like. And so is there a way, within your opinion, that there's some sort of oversight still within the city to control things that happen? So if there was an opportunity where BWO went rogue, what are we doing, and what does that relationship look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think the system works pretty well right now. We certainly, that is one of the most vetted boards from council, from the mayor, in terms of experience, in terms of people who are on that board, that the board members have a lot of responsibility in hearing a lot of information. Rate changes are always going to be controversial. We didn't have rate changes for 2 or 3 years during the pandemic, and we're going through it as is consumers, as is DTE. They're all looking at rate increases, whether they did or did not during the pandemic. I get it, I do, and it can be frustrating for everyone. I don't think, a charter change, personally. I think that we want a separate board where you have experts laying out the information and that they're listening to the citizens. I don't know what kind of public comment there was at that board, so you'd have to ask them. But I do think that the system with the Board of Water and Light mostly works. They've been very, especially after some of the recent storms and things, when our folks have been put back on within hours, when many of the other communities under other utilities have taken a lot longer because they have a lot bigger footprint. For me, the board does a good job, and when I go to mayoral conferences and things, people ask me, how do I get a Board of Water and Light? They do. In the Detroit area, I probably shouldn't call out communities, but I've had several communities say, how do I do that? It tells me that, again, is everything perfect? Nothing's perfect. But I do think that it works pretty well. I'd love to see our board be able to expand and serve more areas. But again, then you have issues with consumers and others. So, electric consumers, and then water. Other communities have their own water. But I think they do a good job.
Commissioner Washington?
Thank you. I just thought of a couple things, but I'm not going to talk about the Board of Water and Light because Chair Jeffries told me we're actually going to have them in, but I think the angst is it's a public utility, unlike other utility companies, and the public doesn't have a say in what happens. There's no way to appeal 9% and 9%, and there's no way to appeal these exorbitant wages that are being paid. I almost choked when I read the wages. So I think that's the angst with the public. But my questions for you is, first one, I forgot to ask about the mills. Could you explain to me again what you were talking about with the 20 mills? I missed part of it.
Yeah. No, and that I don't know that you missed it or if I went too fast. The cities are capped at 20, at a millage rate of 20 under state law. So I know we've got language in our charter, and I think that it should just probably match state law. We can't go over 20 mills, and then it actually reduces every year because of Headley. Most years it'll reduce because of Headley, and we're under the millage cap, but I think we're at 19.5, 19.7. So we really can't go any higher than that. So I know we've got language in the charter with provisions on percentages and things like that, and I would think.
So you're saying we should go up to 20 mils?
No, I think we should match state law, which is maximum 20 mils.
Maximum?
Not require 20 mils.
But maximum. Well, I'm always concerned about that because, if we go up maximum, we're going to go up. And I think a lot of people don't understand where that mills money comes from and how that's paid. Right. Frankly, I'm tired of my property taxes being what they are. And it's us that are paying it, and the average citizen doesn't understand that. They think it comes from the air. So I will keep a tight look on that because I'm not interested in half of my property tax being millages and bonds.
Council can reduce the millage rate at any time. I wouldn't recommend it, but.
Well, I'm just saying we always find something we want to raise that mill and bonds for, and frankly, we all need to learn to live within our means. My second question is, there's been a lot of contention with previous mayors, with the relationship between the mayor and the city attorney. Although the city attorney is supposed to work for the mayor and the council, we know that's not true. The mayor can fire the city attorney. So we know where that's going to bend. How do you find a way that perhaps that can be remedied? I've been doing my research, and I can't see if in the state of Michigan, if we can elect a city attorney. But I'm wondering how we get that pull off where the mayor has really much more power over the city attorney.
See, I would disagree with that
Well,
with the
of
assertion.
course.
I really would. The city attorney tells me no all the time, and I don't like it. But I expect a city attorney to follow the law. I expect the city attorney to follow the charter and to follow the ordinances and to follow state and federal law. And if they don't, then both council and the mayor should want them gone. And every attorney I've had has told me no on numerous accounts. Now, it's not as public. I may have a meeting with the city attorney or call them and say, hey, I'd like to do this. And they say, nope, you can't do that. I've done it with a lot of gun stuff. I want to do a lot of gun ideas, a lot of gun stuff. And they, nope, you can't do that. Nope, you can't do that. It's more public when they do it at a council meeting, although many council members will talk to the city attorney. I don't get told that. They have, each one of the two city attorneys that I have had, I believe, have been extremely ethical. And they don't tell me. I don't find out when council members ask for things. I don't find out when they're told no. A lot of times I don't find out what they're working on for council until a council person calls me and says, hey, we're working on this right now. And then I'll say to the city attorney, hey, I hear you're working on this. You know, this council member told me, and then they can tell me. I think it's a matter of ethics. I think that the city attorney works for the mayor, works for council, provides information to council and legal advice to council, just like they provide legal advice to the mayor. I don't think it's a good idea to have an elected city attorney, because I think that the city attorney should be a bureaucrat, basically. They should be someone who follows the law. And that's all I've ever expected from my city attorneys. I can't speak to anyone else. And if there's city attorneys that were doing things against the law, then throw them out.
Yeah, well, I frankly would be okay with an elected city attorney. I'm okay with an elected attorney general. I'm okay with all of that, because then I think I think it's an independent and they don't owe anybody anything. But I'm going to look more into that. I may be against it when I'm done researching it.
I'd have concerns about people campaigning for city attorney, about promises they make as campaigning for a city attorney. I know, but that's just not something I'd like to see, is people campaigning for, what they're. That we can disagree very respectfully, and I appreciate you.
Any other questions? Commissioner Anderson.
And I just want to clarify, it's not about the attorney following the law. I think the concern lies with their interpretation of the law and using leverage and power to make that interpretation of the law suit whatever the needs are of the mayor, and not saying like within this administration or anything like that. But I think that that's how it appears from a citizen perspective. And I think that council has also expressed those concerns as well. And so I hear what you're saying, and I don't want to negate your experience, but I also want to acknowledge that there are other experiences within that, and it's a very real concern.
Yes, ma'am.
Other questions? Okay, we're running a little bit late here tonight. I have two real quick questions. Okay.
I'll be quick. Sorry.
Special assessments. We talked about the 20 mil cap.
Yeah.
And, what I'm seeing municipalities do, and I think what the city of Lansing did on the Red Cedar development, is they used the special assessment process to get beyond that 20 mil cap. In the sense that on special assessments, only the property that benefits gets the tax. But in that case, the entire city, the levy of that tax was spread across the entire city, and that was not added to that 20 mil cap.
Right.
What's your opinion on putting limitations within the charter in the special assessment section that would prevent that from happening in the future?
So that was a unique case. I think special assessments are effective in that if you have citizens in a certain area and they want to specially assess themselves, we'd look at the property over in Eaton County where we have a special assessment. I think of sidewalks. We've talked with some neighborhoods, hey, if you want to specially assess yourselves to fix sidewalks, hasn't happened yet. I do think there's utility for special assessments. The Red Cedar property was different because it was a drain code issue. It was very, very special and very, very unique. Under the drain code, you can in essence specially assess as part of the drain code, and because that's pre-Headley, it's outside the 20 mills. Again, it's a unique situation. Council had to pass it, and again, I think this is.
Do you promise not to do that again?
I do not plan to. I don't plan to do anything with the drain code again. And again, I believe very much in the Red Cedar project. It's something I did inherit, but
No.
I do believe in that project, and I do believe in that we've got a good product as a result. But I will tell you that dealing with the drain code is not something I would ever want to do. I feel for the drain commissioner, and as a legislator, I remember people trying to change the drain code. So it was a unique situation where. Again, it was under the drain code, but most of our drains are city drains, except for in certain few instances. But so yeah, I would agree with you that that was a unique situation. But again, the legislative body did pass it, and that is a decision made by elected leaders where they get to make that decision. They could have decided to do 100% assessment in that property, and then the businesses and the residents in that area would be very, very upset. Or they could have decided to put it all on all of the citizens, in which case that would have been unfair because you're doing it for a specific area. I thought the result they came up with the 50-50 split was fair. But yeah, this was a legislative decision made, and I respect the decision process to have to do that.
Okay. One other question deals with the Board of Water and Light. Currently, the charter calls out that the services that they provide, water, heat, steam, and electric services, and then talks about such additional utility services of the city. What's your opinion if we would add to that section that the Board of Water and Light be required to manage the sewer system of the city?
That's interesting. I have not given that any thought until just now. I'd have to think about that.
Okay.
I know we have some of the issues we have when it comes to sewers is the difference between solid waste and stormwater.
Right.
Solid waste, we can do an enterprise fund under state law, and it can pay for itself. Stormwater, we can't. So stormwater management has to come from general fund. I don't know. I'd have to talk to our public service folks to see what they think. I'd have to talk to the Board of Water and Light folks to see their capacity. I'd have to get back to you on that. It's not something that's been brought up to me before, but it's an interesting idea.
Well, if you could check it out,
Yeah.
let us know what you think. That'd be great.
Say that again. So you said the sewer management.
Sewer management.
I've not even given that a minute's thought. So you got me there, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Try not to.
No, it's fine.
All right.
It's
Are
an
there-
interesting idea.
Are there any other questions? Hearing none, thank you for spending the time with us this evening.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for your service. Honestly, you all have a very tough job, and I appreciate it. This is what you're doing is our future, and I appreciate you all running, and I appreciate you all serving greatly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stay in touch. You're always welcome back.
Thank you.
Okay. The next presentation we have is from former council president and council member Carol Wood. She's going to be joining us remotely. And do we have her? Yep, there she is. Hey, Carol, can you hear us?
We can't hear you.
Cannot hear you, Carol. Unmute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Yes, we can.
Okay.
Welcome, and thank you for staying up tonight to talk to us. We did get your materials that you sent in to us, and thank you very much for putting that in writing. And I'm sure you've been watching the mayor, and it's going to be a very similar presentation. If you just want to give an overview of some of the ideas and issues that you raised, In any, you can talk about anything you want relative to the charter, form of government, ward system, anything that's in there, and you've got a list that you gave us. Please go over that, and then we'll just open up to Q&A.
Okay.
Is that good?
First of all, thank you for inviting me. I'm not sure why, but I appreciate the opportunity. I think first and foremost, I want to address what I believe the purpose is for the commission as they're looking at the charter, and that is looking at accountability for clarity and to make sure that there is a clear path if there are violations of the charter. As I went through the charter, I looked at, I could have gone through numerous pages of items and things that I felt were important to the city and that needed to be looked at. But I think also part of what the commission has to decide is what is passable to the public. And what I mean by that is you could have a myriad of items that you want to look at changing, but in reality, which of those will actually be supported by the public? And so I think that's something that you need to dwindle down as you're having these conversations. So what I did was I went through and I looked at certain sections and over my experience of the 24 years on council, came up with some that I felt needed to seriously be considered. And I don't know, Mr. Chairman, whether you want me to go through each section. As you indicated, you had passed this out to the commissioners ahead of time, whether they just want to question me on the different sections. I realize the time is late and you have another presentation after me, so I'm open to any suggestions that you have.
Well, we don't have another presentation after you. There's another one noted, but it was just for a future date. I just put that on the agenda. If you want to just go through your highlights, I thought your explanations, your highlights were good, and then the explanations were very good. Maybe kind of condense that a little bit, and I think that would then open up some questions from us.
All right, thank you. The first one section that I looked at was ineligibility for office, and this has had a series of different interpretations by the city attorney's office. As I indicated here, there was a candidate who had run for a council position when Marilyn Slade was the city clerk. That particular person owed property taxes to the city, was in delinquent. Ms. Slade then moved to have this candidate removed from the ballot, and the city attorney's office took up the case on behalf of the clerk. Billy Joe O'Berry was the attorney in the city attorney's office that represented the clerk in court, and the court decided the candidate was ineligible to be on the ballot. More recently, Brigham Smith, who was city attorney, interpreted this section by allowing a candidate to be on the ballot for the election. And if the person was elected and the taxes were paid before taking oath, then this person was eligible to run to hold the office. This ineligibility for office also is something that council members have to, when they are on council, have to make sure that they're eligible. We had a case of a council member who was delinquent with their property taxes. The city clerk had turned the matter over to the county, and by the time that was discovered, the city attorney's office stated that the elected official was no longer in default to the city because the delinquent taxes were now in the hands of the county. So I believe that there needs to be some stronger language that requires elected officials running for office, those that are in office, as well as any board members, appointees, to be current with their obligations to the city. And the reason I think that that's so important is, especially for council members, is they're receiving taxpayer dollars. Boards and commissions are sometimes making decisions that impact dollars. And when you look at our procurement ordinance, in order to bid on or to offer services to the city, you have to be current with your taxes. And so I think that those things are something that need to be cleaned up. Also, forfeiture and removal from office. It says there that if it lacks any time the qualifications by the charter, that that you could be in forfeiture or removed for cause. I think an annual reporting system is needed to ensure that elected and appointed officials comply with the charter, and that report should be due February 1st before taxes are turned over to the county. That way you'll have the information ahead of time. I know there's been a lot of discussion about wards and at-large positions. Having served as an at-large member, I do believe that there's value in that. I think the concerns that I have in changing it to all wards would be, there's a section in the charter that talks about making sure that the changing population, that the ward positions, there's the potential of having to change boundaries more often if you had just ward positions. So that's a concern I have. I do understand where some people are concerned about the geographic area and making it impossible for someone to run at large. One of the things that you could look at is possibly the 1st and 4th ward or the 3rd and 4th ward, that those be at large positions. Again, I think my biggest concern was removing all of the at-large positions. I've also heard comments about the number of council members. I would have, and again, these are your decisions, but as a former council member, I don't see anything with reducing it by 1 to have 7 or increasing it by 1 to have 9. But I think, again, looking at our geographic area, we have to be cautious of that. The mayor also mentioned the section on temporarily absent, of the temporary absence of the mayor. I think there needs to be a better definition of that in the charter. I know were several instances since I was on council, excuse me, where the mayor was temporarily absent from the city and had not notified the president of council. But again, it's their interpretation of what that means. Next had to do with rights and responsibilities of council members. It's been my observation for the years that I've been on council that council members do have, by the charter, the opportunity to ask employees questions, to receive information. But I also know that there have been numerous times over my career that council as a body or committees or individual council members have asked questions of city officials, and employees have been told that they were not allowed to answer. So that is a problem that I see as well. I'm not sure whether it's my TV or whether half my screen is gone. Are you seeing me okay?
Nope, you're off the screen right now.
I'm off? Okay. How about now?
They're working on it. Oh, there you are.
Okay. All right. Not that I need to be seen. But I think there needs to be some type of language added into this section for accountability, that if a supervisor has directed an employee not to provide council members with information, that supervisor must be held accountable. City actions requiring ordinances. Over my years, I have watched ordinances, changes to ordinances and new ordinances created where the enforcing department should be required to do training on the ordinance, so to make sure that it's enforceable. If for any reason the department deems that the ordinance is unclear or unable to be enforced, the department director must send a notice to council within 45 days of the passage of the enactment of the ordinance, explaining the issues, and the director then can be penalized if a department does not enforce an ordinance and has not reported to council. An example of that is we passed an ordinance dealing with property taxes, and that in order to get in a rental certificate, your property taxes had to be paid. We worked with the city attorney's office on that to make sure that that was legal. We were seeing landlords that were not paying their property taxes, letting it turn over to the county, and then paying 1 year at a time so that they wouldn't go into having tax sales on their property. All the while they're collecting rents from individuals. So we passed the ordinance. It was sent over to Development and Planning Department, and under the code enforcement manager, they were supposed to ensure that that was happening, that as certificates were being issued, that one of the things that they were doing was checking for taxes to make sure that they were paid. That ordinance was in effect for several years, and when we had a discussion in public safety about some of the problems that we were having, I pointed out that a particular landlord had a certificate of occupancy but hadn't paid taxes in 3 years, and was told at that point that the code office manager had deemed that that was not a legal ordinance and wasn't enforcing it. And so I think, we go through the whole process of working with departments, working with the city attorney, passing an ordinance that is approved by the mayor, isn't vetoed, and then to have departments on their own make interpretations and refuse to enforce that. I think there's a problem with that. Under department head, I think there needs to be a section within this portion of the charter that requires council to do an annual review of each department head's contract with a performance-based of objectives that is laid out in their contract. This review should be done before within the year, and it should be done by December 1st, so that they're not entering into a new contract without having had that review by council. It doesn't mean that the mayor still could not continue to hire them, but at least there would be something on the record on whether they were providing the performance that they needed as a department head. There's been a lot of discussion about the law department. I'm not sure that we necessarily should have a city attorney for office like a prosecutor does. But I do believe that there should be a provision added into this section that would allow counsel to get outside legal advice when they feel the information that they receive from the city attorney's office is inaccurate or that could be interpreted differently. This council must have confidence in the information that they are being provided while they're making decisions for the city. It would be something that would have to be paid for out of the council budget, but I do believe that there needs to be something in there that allows for that to happen. Appointments of board members. I think my concern that I have currently is that I believe that the mayor should be required to notify council 30 days before the completion of a term for reappointment or a new appointment if it's not forthcoming, and why. The idea, and the mayor brought up, sometimes there's a vetting process that takes a while. All right, that information should be provided instead of just having a seat that someone continues to serve on and no one understands where that position is and what's going to happen with it. I think the concern that I have is council passes a resolution that has a term in it. It's a beginning of what the term is and an end date. And in essence, the way it's been interpreted by the administration and by the city attorney is that position is not considered vacant as long as somebody is still in that position. And in essence, that person could serve for another 3 years and not be reappointed. And I think if there's a concern that council is not going to reappoint that person, then, there needs to be some accountability with that. Advisory board functions. I think one of the things that I've heard from different advisory boards is often that the agency that the board is responsible for, you will find that the person that is either the director or a management person is responsible for decides the scope of what the advisory board should be responsible for. They're also running their meetings and putting together their agendas. And I believe that should be done by the boards, and that's a board function. Lastly, I think the one other concern has to do with the budget. Oftentimes, when we do a budget resolution, that includes each department that while we're going through the budget process, we know how many people are slated to staff for the personnel dollars that are indicated in the budget. I believe that the budget resolution should also include the department staffing levels. And if those levels increase over the fiscal year, then council should approve the funding for those positions and increase the number of positions and understand how those will continue to be funded in the future. That's fast because, again, with the lateness of the hour, I wanted to make sure that I got through this. So I'm open for any questions.
So, any questions for Councilmember Wood?
Very thorough.
Carol, I do have, would like to get an impression, in terms of the internal auditor position that's with council, that over time, at least in my time when I was there, was not real effective, and it's assigned to the council itself. Do you think that should continue? What kind of staffing should it have, do you think? Or should this be somewhat of an independent position, maybe a department created to do that function? How do you see that?
I would not have a problem at all with it being an independent department that I wouldn't want to see it appointed by the mayor. I think it should be something that's appointed by council, but that they're doing a good analysis on the budgetary issues that we're dealing with, as well as looking at forecasting. We've often talked about what is the 5-year projection, what are we looking at in 5 years from now and things like that. And I just believe that there's that there really should be something set aside for that, yes.
Okay. In terms of the boards and commissions, in the charter, it provides that on an annual basis, the commissions and boards are supposed to do their own internal review and submit that review, as well as when the budget is being forwarded from the department to the mayor, they are to be able to have input on that, and their comments are supposed to be added to the department's comments, sent to the mayor, and then from the mayor on to city council. Quite frankly, I don't remember a lot of that going on. What was your experience, or has been your experience with those kind of reports?
Some do and some don't. Brian, as an example, the Parks Board, they put together a 5-year plan.
Right.
And in the budget, the park millage money, they have the minutes of the park board meetings showing where they have voted on, the Parks Board has voted on different items that they want to see happen. Public Service Board for the last several years has presented information both at the budget time and at budget priorities to the council. We receive an annual report from the police department that's done, and the fire department that's done by the commissioners. Now, as far as having them have a report at the budget time, we haven't always gotten them from the police and the fire department, but those are the few boards that we have received information from, and the majority of them we haven't. But again, I think, when I talked about this early on, if you're going to have something in the charter, there needs to be accountability, and if it's not being followed through, what is the recourse? Mm-hmm. That's something that, we've asked 100 times from a council perspective. Okay, if it says this, why aren't you doing this? And if there's no consequence to that action, then it will continue, and the lax from whether it's a board or a department or whatever will continue because they know that there isn't a consequence to them not following through.
All right, say we live in a perfect world and all that information was being given out and it was being received by council. Do you think that provides enough accountability? Does it show enough transparency in terms of how the city is governing itself and working? Or are there other additional things that should be added to get to that transparency issue and the accountability? And, it's going to give a sense of surety, at least to the people, that things are being taken care of in the right way here in the city.
I think the answer to that is, and I'm using boards right now. Let's just look at boards. Boards and commissions that are there have their own rules Those rules are put together by the board. They're approved by the city attorney's office. They come to council. If council has an issue with things that are in those, then they send them back to the board or commission to review and go back over. I believe that we could have something in the charter that said that this is the goals that the board has to accomplish, but then it needs to be in the boards and commissions in their rules. I think this is where trying to lay everything out in the charter becomes problematic. It's no different than the charter. Our current charter talks about a retirement system. We have and that a merit system, and that is and then there was supposed to be an ordinance that was created. We did that. The same with ethics. That was done. I think there's a blueprint that you can lay out, but then the fine print of that blueprint then needs to be followed up in ordinances. And again, it becomes down to the accountability. I think then people would have more faith in the transparency. One of the things that is making sure that boards and commissions are holding their meetings, a portion of their meetings in the public, that they are having anything that deals with such as the Parks Board, let's use that as an example, their 5-year plan. They have to show in that 5-year plan how many public hearings they've had and where they've had them, and they have to have transcripts of the people that have spoken at those. Those show accountability. There is a book there that I can hold on to and I can reference, and people can see and know that that board has done what it's supposed to have done. Can I say the same with HRCS or some of the other boards? If they don't have that type of demonstration, then you can see where people don't feel that there's accountability.
Okay. Any other questions? Go ahead, Commissioner Cowley.
Hey, good evening, Carol Wood. I had a question about the Section 4304, the Law Department.
Yes.
I'd just like to know right now if council does not agree with the interpretation of the city attorney, what is their recourse currently?
Currently, we're told we're ultra virus. We have no recourse. We have on occasion hired outside attorneys. One occasion, we hired an outside attorney that was dealing with an issue with Mayor Bonero that then was inherited by Mayor Benavides. But what happened is they refused to pay the bill. So we received the opinion from the outside attorney. We made some ordinance changes that had to do with benefits for mayoral staff and buyouts and that. And we found out that we had, at an earlier time, through an ordinance, council had advocated their responsibility, and so we made changes. But right now, again, we're told we're ultra virus. It's a Latin word that they use whenever they want to put the hammer on council, and there is nothing that we can do if you don't have 6 members of council that are willing to step forward and say that they want an outside opinion.
Thank you.
Other questions? Commissioner Washington.
Good evening, Carol. I just have a couple questions. One, is regarding this internal auditor, and you said that you could see the value in there being an internal auditor department, perhaps that reports to the council. But what I was wondering is, we all know one internal auditor cannot do anything. I think at one time there were like, what, 5 or 6? It was quite a staff. And one of our mayors was pretty good about getting rid of that. But if it were in the charter that it were a department, or that there had to be certain things, do you think that that department or those auditors could also, or would it be appropriate for them to also do auditing of the Board of Water and Light?
I wouldn't see necessarily a problem with that. Currently, currently council's internal auditor could ask Board of Water and Light questions about their rates and things like that. And I know council has done that in the past, and especially during the.
Uh-oh.
We can't hear you.
Okay, can you hear me now? Hello?
We hear you.
We can hear
Hear me
you.
now?
Yeah.
Yeah, can you hear us?
Okay. During the ice storm, I know that the internal auditor sat down and reviewed all the figures and things that came from that. So I know that's happened in the past before.
Yeah. Well, thank you, because I personally think internal auditing is incredibly important, and a lot is found and corrected through internal auditing. So I've always felt that that was an area that needed to be beefed up, actually quite a bit. My second question regards the police department and the fire department. Now, we are always day late, dollar short of getting our positions filled, because the process is so long and they take other jobs. It's my opinion, but I would like to know what your opinion is that the police and fire should do their own hiring or have their own people in HR to do it, and that we shouldn't be relying totally on HR for those critical departments. I'd like your thoughts on that.
Well, for many years, there was HR specialists that just handled police and fire because of the background checks, the psychological checks that they do, as well as all the testing that they have to do. Just like everything else, as people retired and positions were not filled, and then through the organizational chart, an unfilled position then became one that was eliminated. I think having HR people that specialize in those types of hiring processes does help. Again, I think, part of what we've heard on council is that for a while there were not people interested in coming in to fire and police. We are seeing more increases in that now in the future. But I think the other problem that we have is, as officers retire, they come in a school.
Right.
And then they retire in a school. So if you have 10 officers that came in new, 25 years later, 10 officers are leaving. And it is making sure that you are front loading those positions. You might pay for 6 months to have 2 people in that position. But then when that person retires, you end up with a less of a salary base because they're not a senior position, but that position is filled, trained, and they're on their own.
Yeah. I appreciate that, and frankly, I find this to be so important, because these are our first responders. They are absolutely critical, that I'm hoping we look at a way in the charter to ensure that we have specialists for those two departments. Thank you, Carol.
Thank you.
Are there other questions? Okay, hearing none. Carol, thank you so much for being with us tonight and staying with us for this long. Appreciate very much the information that you've given. It's been very helpful. And, you know, again, as with the mayor, you're always welcome to come back and give us more advice. And I know you like to give advice. So
Well, I
thank
want to
you.
thank you for having me. I hope what I gave you was something that was beneficial. I appreciate the different commissioners that have reached out to me and asked my opinion on different things with the council and the charter. And I just wish you guys all the luck in the world. I know that this is a difficult process, but I know that you'll get it done. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Carol. Okay, on the agenda, we had under presentation C, this is just a notation for everybody. At our next meeting on October 22nd, there will be a presentation by Professor Mark Skidmore regarding a report that that his department, or it's the Center for Local Government, Finance and Policy at Michigan State, put together, and it's regarding the forms of government, the strong mayor form of government, city manager form of government, as well as it reviews the makeup, not necessarily the makeup of at-large and ward council members, but the number of council members. And it does a study across the country looking at a lot of different cities, and then it focuses on those cities that are state capitals, and I think has a lot of good information in it. So that will be next at our next meeting. Hopefully at that meeting, we'll also take up the issue and maybe finalize whether we're going to go with a strong mayor form of government or not, and maybe with a city manager form of government. We'll have spent 6 weeks on that issue by that time, and I think we should be in a position to make that decision. We should also be thinking about the ward issue, the at-large issue, and then the overall number of council members as well. Also, just as it relates to the Board of Water and Light, November 12th. So since the election is coming up, our next meeting after the 22nd will be November 12th. And we will have a presentation by the Board of Water and Light at that meeting. And I'm not sure who the presenters are, but I'm sure they will be here with some good information for us. So is there any questions with regards to those issues? Okay, hearing none. Under old business, form of government discussion. It's getting quite late. Do we want to discuss anything, or should we move on? All right, we're moving on. Okay, there's no new business. Commissioner remarks. Hearing none there. Public comment. Is there any public comment? Do we have anybody?
We have no sheets. We have no signed up to speak.
Okay, so there's no public comment. With that, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.